I'm trying to think about, big name authors tend to do this. What's this? Oh, I can't pull him to mind. I'm having a complete name failure.
J.K. Rowling?
No, it's...
George R.R. Martin?
What?
Oh.
Brandon Sanderson does that a lot with his writing. He's constantly trying to take what readers expect of him and change it up a little bit. Not even in like the, oh, wow, that's so crazy, I didn't expect that, but in the way of, my last character of this type acted this certain way, and I don't want to make a repeat of my last one. I want to do something different and something that sort of like is new for my readers to see and understand.
You did actually point it out. I remembered it. It was George R.R. Martin.
Yeah.
The first thing he does in Game of Thrones is he kills off the obvious king, the obvious next character who should be king. First thing he does is he kills that character. Why? Because he knows that that's the one you're all going to be rooting for. Then he looks at his story and he says, all right, who's next in line that looks like the person we ought to be getting rid of? Boom, dead. And literally, he's reading the forums. He's reading the fan forums, and if anybody gets to be too popular, that one's on the chopping block. Don't admit you like somebody. Keep it to yourself, because he's watching. That man is evil.
Right.
He's gleefully evil. And he's already said no one is going to be, if the only way he's going to be happy with the ending of the series is if nobody is happy with the ending of the series.
All right. On that note, we'd like to introduce ourselves and begin the panel.
Okay.
I guess, do we?
Do we?
We've got 2 minutes.
We have 2 minutes. All right.
So we can finish up on Game of Thrones.
No, I think I'm good.
That would be something.
Yes.
I'm not going to try to do that before he does.
You're going to have a long way.
Yeah, seriously.
He had better rate faster.
Yeah. It's like Patrick Rothfuss. It was actually my sister who was like, hey, John, this is a really good fantasy book that I just read, and I think you'll like it a lot. I just finished it in the sequel, and check it out. So then during finals week at school, I started reading it, which was a terrible decision because I finished it during finals week. And
how did finals go?
They went okay considering.
It was a good book.
It was a very good book. But I finished Wise Man's Fear, and I was like, damn, this is really good. I need the sequel. So I went and I found, The Wise Man's Fear was the second one, right? Was it? Or the second one was...
series.
Anyway, I finished the second book in the Kingkiller Chronicles, and I was like, I just rushed through it. It was great, amazing. I finished it. I was like, yes, where's the third book? I looked it up. I was like, oh, it's been 6 years and it's not out, and no one has an ETA for it.
I just found out there's 3 more books in Joel Rosenberg, the Guardians of the Flame, that I haven't read, and I'm like, do I really want to go back to those?
I went on my like message app, and I sent my sister some angry texts. Why didn't you warn me? You should have told me. But yeah. Okay. All right. Want to just begin a minute early?
I guess we can. So this is intro to writing. How to put words on the page. Done. I've saved you 90 minutes. Saved you a click. My name is Orrery. I have been writing in some fashion since I was 8. I finished my first 60-word novella at that age. My mother has told me I've never shut up since. I have 3 books published at this point and a number of short stories. I have something coming out in Claw it's being released in the dealer's room this year, at Anthrocon this year, and that's why I'm up here to talk about how to get started.
Hi, I'm Skunk Bomb. I've been writing stories in the fandom since, I believe, 2015. Most recently, also in Claw, which is, of course, available in the dealer's den at this convention.
Yeah, I don't have any books to show for this convention. I'm gonna. Oh well, I do. I'm in Arcana, which is a damn good anthology and a fun read, and it's also in the dealer's den. But so my name is Significant Otter. I also go by John because that's my name, and I've recently entered sort of the furry writing community about 2 years ago. Before that, I posted a lot of stuff online. And I had been writing for like 5 or 6 years before that, trying to get serious, and then I got serious, and it's been a roller coaster since that. Anyway, I do want to ask quickly if the people in the back can hear us okay. I'm a loud person, and all right, awesome. So that works. Anyway. But yeah, I've been published a few times. I'm going to be in the upcoming release of Fang, which you should definitely check out. It's not at this con, but it's got to be coming out in the next month, I think.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
All right.
You want to set the scene.
Yes.
So.
I like starting with this because this is a thing that a lot of people talk about. That a lot of people get people look at either writing and say, oh, this is a really cool talent that you have, or they say, oh. Writing, yeah, I want to write a book someday. I just want to put things down, write the book, and then I'm going to sell it to a publisher because it's a great idea, and I'm going to make it big. I hate to break it to you, but writing is a skill, and it's hard work. You don't go and like hum a tune one day in your head, and then sit down on the piano, write it out, and you've made a masterpiece. It takes a lot of practice, a lot of effort to improve, and that's part of what we want to talk about here at this panel, like ways to improve your writing at the beginner level, ways to really set your goals, set your focus, and get better. Just like art, writing takes effort to get good. It takes some dedication, and it takes going through hard times. I have a friend who writes upwards of like 4,000 to 5,000 words a day. I know
Your
that.
friend is crazy, by the
Yes.
way. I want to
Of the
start by...
wilds. Of the wilds.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I just
they're-
want to start by saying that the person you're describing here is insane.
They
Dedicated, but...
They are. Well, they started in college. What they did was in college at some point, they were doing okay in college, but it wasn't what they wanted, and they wanted to be a writer. So they got a copy of Stephen King's On Writing, and Stephen King says somewhere in there that, hey, what I had to do was I had to sit down and I had to write 2,000 words a day. And so he decided, I'm going to do this too. I'm going to write 2,000 words a day, and it's tough. There are days that you feel like you can't do it. There are days that you feel like every word that you put out is shitty, nothing works together, everything is going to fall apart. But if you keep on doing it, it becomes easier, it becomes more natural, and now he's just writing insane amounts a day because it's become normal to him. He's honed his abilities. He's used this dedication has made this easier and easier for him to accomplish, and he does it better and better now. Like Ori's been writing a long time, and you write things so damn fast. We were all baffled at Brar.
So there is let's start with a question. Who in here has written at least one short story or written at least one story? Okay, I want to pause a moment, and all of you give yourselves a round of applause for that. Okay,
Finishing things is damn
finishing
hard
something is hard.
Yeah.
Let's start with that. You finished something. Okay, that alone is worth acknowledging. Finishing something that you start is a difficult enough thing to do by itself that it is praiseworthy unto itself. I suck at that. Okay, I have a drafts folder that shames me every time I look at it because I'm still here. Go away! I don't want to look at you! I'm going to start a new project and it's going to be great this time, and I get 500 words in it. I can't do it. It goes into the drafts folder.
I had a lot of trouble with that too. I don't do it as much anymore. I did do it with my Swords Master story last year. I wrote like 3/4 of it, and then I just never finished. But like when I was starting to get into writing, like back in high school and everything, when I was like trying to really like do writing, do a lot of it, post it online. I had my DeviantArt account that I posted my writing to. But like I would write these either first chapters or 3/4 of a chapter, and then I'd post the teaser online. Then I'd post like the halfway point online, because like when you're writing something, you want to get that immediate validation, but that immediate validation kind of pulls away from the final product that you have once you finish it. It's very hard to convince yourself to finish this first whole draft. And you need to figure out like how to do it, because finishing full drafts of stories, finishing entire chapters, is how you're going to get better at writing. Being able to put out these, because finally what I did was I ended up saying, okay, I'm gonna just write this like 24 chapter long, so furry epic story, and post a chapter a week, and force myself to write every day until I have this put out. Send it to my friend to edit quickly, and then I get it back and post it online. And I did that for about 24 chapters, and that thing, like, it's a terrible story. The plot structure is awful. The character arcs don't make a ton of sense. The language is bad. It improves over the course of the story, though. And what happened over the course of doing that was, even though I wrote this thing that I would never want published, and I wouldn't want my friends to see it, it made me into a better writer. It's what allowed me to move forward, and completing these chapters, completing these stories, allowed me to take the next step in my writing and really put out things that I thought were publishable content, and I could go forward with.
And backing up just a moment, I know we've been talking about like writing 4,000 to 5,000 words a day and like 24 like chapters like story, but just want you to know now, like, you do not have to write thousands of words a day or several like chapter stories in order to like be like to reach like your goal. Like
This friend is
like,
cray. I write honestly about maybe 500 words on a good day.
Hang on, let's
Sorry, go
sorry, but yes, like this is like the beginning and novice writers panel. Like you guys are just starting out. Like there's no shame. Like if you only write like maybe like a page like a day or a page in just a week, there's no shame in that. You started something. Like you're working towards something, and everyone has their own pace. And especially since like you guys are still learning, like you might not, and also you might probably have like day jobs and other factors that may keep you away from writing. But as long as you're like working like toward it, you're still working toward it, and you're still improving, and that's still admirable.
One of the things that's important to talk about as a beginner is, where do you even start? How do you even get started? In every other art, there's, for musicians, there's scales. You sit down and you practice your scales. For artists, I have seen so many pages of hands and eyes and just random doodles. Where do you get started with a writer? Where do you get started? Does anybody have any ideas? Yes.
Short stories,
Okay, that's a good idea.
writing prompts.
Writing prompts are a really good one. Yes, in the back.
Character descriptions.
Character descriptions. Thank you. That was the one I was hoping somebody would come up with. Who here has done people watching? This con is filthy with fascinating people and not people, let's be fair. People and animals who want to be people, and people who want to be animals, and animals that might have to look like people temporarily. Come to the TF panel later, it'll be great. This con is rife with fascinating characters. Sit down with a pad of paper and give yourself a paragraph. Find somebody that's walking past and write a description. What does this person look like? Write down what they look like. And when you first start out, this person is just going to be, they are this tall and they have this outfit and they look like this and they dress like this and they have these clothes and they're walking. And you have a description. Great. You have described them, you've captured their physical essence. Pause, step back. How do they move? Are they walking fast? Are they walking slow? Are they striding deliberately? Are they ambling peacefully? Are they going somewhere with purpose? Do they look lost? Are they confused? How are they getting from point A to point B? Who are they talking to? What are they doing in the moment? You have a second paragraph now. What are they doing? Describe their actions. Find something that they are standing near. Describe that thing. Find one thing. Pick one thing in their environment and describe that thing. You now have 3 paragraphs of pure setting, character analysis, and action. What have you just established? Plot, character, and setting. All you've done is a very basic exercise that you can do at any time, at any place. It takes you about 15 minutes, and you can do this once a day, every day, anywhere you are. This is what we talk about when we say fundamentals. This is how you rehearse your scales as a novice. And frankly, this is something I don't do enough of. I rely far too much on this thing, which is getting old. Because we like to talk about the fantastic. We're all furries here, I presume, or at the very least we're interested in furries. And we want to immediately jump into talking about animal people and furries and animals and all kinds of exotic creatures. Those are fantastic. But they exist in a world. We can create realms of pure thought where these things exist in the abstract. But they will exist somewhere in your world, in a world that you are creating. And we need to be able, as writers, to convince the people that are reading our work to see the characters as we see them, or at the very least to project their own visions of those characters in their mind so that they can see them along with us. And so, how do we capture what we want to share about a character alongside the words that we're writing? When we want to start talking about furries, we're going to ask our readers to launch into the purely speculative and imaginative with us. We need to have a good grounding in the physical, so that when we ask people to imagine the flap of a wing, the swish of a tail, the flick of an ear, we're doing it from a position of good grounding. We're doing it from a position that the rest of the story holds together. And so doing this starts from a place of being able to say that this person that we're describing is older, moving slowly, leaning on a cane, their tail sweeping slowly back and forth, scraping against the ground, leaving a small trail of loose fur as it slid across the concrete. And these kinds of ideas just build one layer of description at a time, but you can do this kind of practice with anything, and it just takes a little bit of work. And you can start this anywhere. This is how you build up your fundamentals. Just pick things and start describing them. What does the air smell like in here to people? Now imagine how it smells to a furry. They are picking out every person in the room and imagine and thinking about what each of you showered or didn't, had for breakfast, or what have you. These are the kinds of things that we are asking our readers to come with us on a journey on. So we need to be ready to bring that to them. And we can do this, but we have to be able to practice it ourselves. So just sit and watch.
Yeah, I want to expand on that a little bit. It's wherever you are, there are things that you can use in your stories, no matter the setting. I was out on the West Coast recently, and I was out on like the rocky, craggy shores, and I was seeing how the rocks were jutting out of the ground, and I was like, shit, this is a really cool bit of scenery here, and I want to be able to replicate this kind of thing in my writing. So I took a minute, I pulled out my notes app, and I jotted down a few paragraphs of different metaphors, different things that it looked like, And then when I got back, I actually included that description. I looked up what I said about it and used that as a way to create this much better visualization, this more like lifelike visualization, because it drew on practice that I had made for this kind of thing, and put that in my story to use that experience. But yeah, it's very, very important to give yourself this nice, constant fundamentals work, to constantly be reminding yourself about how people work, about how people interact with their surroundings, and about how you can really express the visualization of people either directly or indirectly through metaphor. I've got a book recommendation if you want more of this. There's this great book, The 3 a.m. Writer's Workshop. If you've ever read that, it's just got a bunch of these like small exercises like this that help with like little fundamentals bits. Some of them are more involved. I think that there are some that like focus on adverbs and removing adverbs and different things like that. But it's a wonderful little book for like doing these short pieces of writing that help you exercise these fundamentals. Big fan of it.
What was the name of that again?
The 3 a.m. Writer's Workshop. Yeah.
Going on further for just starting or finding inspiration for stories, I think a great question you can ask yourself is, what story that currently does not exist do you want to exist? Like for me, skunks are my favorite, so I wanted to write more stories with skunks in them for the fandom. And I'm sure all of you will have your own persona, and you wish there were more of your persona in stories and in media.
That's a really good point too, because nothing will keep you motivated to write like writing things that you like, because there is nothing. I've written things that were just that were like interesting ideas, but didn't really excite me, and they were just a slog to get through. It was so hard putting words on the page, and I just at points wanted to not write at all, just not even sit down to write. And that can just kill your writing drive. It's important to, especially when you're getting into writing, focus on the things you like. You don't need to put down like some crazy literary work. You can write fun things. Fan fiction is a great way to get into writing because it's fun, it's worlds that you know, it's characters maybe that you know, and you get to experiment with little aspects of writing, like maybe individual character personalities interacting with something that has already been fleshed out, and using that as a way to exercise technique in other areas. But it's also doing it in a fun environment that motivates you and excites you to keep on writing.
Right. When I was at a writing workshop called RAR. One of the other writers in the group, he was working on a story, and at one point it involved car racing, and I could just tell that the way he had written the scene, this guy really enjoyed cars, and I encouraged him to continue writing more in that scene with like the car racing and the car chases, because the enthusiasm for the subject actually improved the story, because when a writer really enjoys something, you can tell on the page when you read it.
Also, maybe the person reading your story doesn't share your enthusiasm about this thing, but if you're enthusiastic about something, it is so fun to listen to people talk about things that they love, even if you don't share the love for that thing. Because people who have this enthusiasm for a topic, for for a scene, a scenario, will just light up and be so animated with their visualizations, with the way that they write about it, or the way that they talk about it, that it's just delightful to look at. And even if it's maybe your area of enthusiasm is some kind of crazy stock market math thing that is boring, and you won't, and it's hard to find. But there are people who will love it. No matter how obscure or how dry you think it is, there are people who will love what you're writing about and will enjoy finding this piece of work.
I think aside from the person who went out of his way to film 10.5 hours of paint drying to piss off the film review board,
Yes.
there are no boring subjects.
Right.
What impassions you? What ennobles you? What excites you? What moves you? What causes your heart to skip? When you think about it, what makes you want to see it in the world? What do you want to see? What do you care about? What do you feel needs to be in the world that isn't already here? Hold these ideas in your mind, focus on them, and say, this is where I want to go. You may not be able to get there today. You may not be able to tell your epic today. I can't. I'm still not there. I've written 3 novels, and I can see the shape of the thing I want to write, and I'm like, I'm not ready. But I'm still working on it myself. And every day you can sit down and say, I'm going to put down some words, and I'm going to practice, and I'm going to get a little bit better. And every time you sit down and write something, you're going to say, I'm writing a physical description, I'm writing a physical description, I'm writing a physical description. My God, I am so tired of just describing people physically. And then at some point, you will write a physical description of a character, and you will say, I don't know, you will use a metaphor. And suddenly you have a new tool, because you've just connected a physical thing to a metaphorical thing. And the first time you successfully use a metaphor, and you describe the setting and the character using a common metaphor, and you go back and you look at the page and you realize that you've done it, you won't realize that you did it intentionally. You won't try to do it the first time. You'll try. The first time I sat down to do this, I tried and I beat my head against the wall for days trying to make this scene look decent. And I'm like, this looks like a mess. This is just dog's breakfast from here to end of the page. And at some point it will click. And you will find a metaphor that captures both the scene and the setting, or the plot and the setting, or the scene and the action, or something. And you'll go, how did I do that? And that moment will be the one that you stop and you go, okay, this is a skill. Now I have something to practice. Now I can go back and I can do this again. I can try to make that happen, this little magic thing that I just did. And you can build on that, because now you have a tool.
I think I want to express there, because this ties into one of the fears that I had when I was first getting into writing, and I think was shared by a lot of people who I've talked to that isn't really talked about much. When I started writing, I was afraid of writing the thing I wanted to write, because I was afraid I wasn't good enough at writing to do it justice. So this was when I would go out and I would write like half a chapter of something, and then it would just fizzle out. Or write 3/4 of a chapter of something and it would fizzle out. And I never got much better because I never really had enough focus to be able to do that, where I kept on writing to the point where I realized these things, or I used new techniques, or I was able to discover these things like you're talking about. But then I just sort of did it. And this was my 24-chapter long, crappy, epic story that wasn't very good. It's an idea that I loved and I still love, but and I might come back and rewrite at some point. But it taught me so much. I had so much fun writing it. And after I finished it, you know what? I had more ideas that I loved and I wanted to write, and I was excited about while I was writing it. And you never stop having fun things to write. You will never write the thing that you love and not have a new thing that you love come up to write after that.
And also, for anyone like concerned about, you're starting a story and you feel like it's just, this is all garbage, like how can I, why should I keep going? Just to let you know, it's a first draft, it's all going to be garbage, and it's not just for beginning writers either, all the way up to say Stephen King, George R.R. Martin, J.K. Rowling, they had first drafts too, and they were most likely also garbage. But of course, there's other drafts that take place after that, and there's showing it to friends that they trust who can give them good feedback. But yeah, there's time to improve it. So if it's not working out right now, like it's okay. Like you can get it to work later on as you improve your skills.
Yeah.
You saw an early draft of my Fang story.
Oh.
That thing changed so much.
Getting it down on the page is more, I cannot stress this enough. Getting it down on the page, getting it out of your head and onto the page or into the file or carved onto the wall or taped to the pigeon or whatever you're doing to express yourself, get it out of you and make it concrete. As long as it is in here, it is perfect and abstract, and it cannot be harmed by physical reality. It is gorgeous and beautiful and perfect and immune to the ravages of anything like reason or doubt, because it does not exist and no one can tell you what it actually looks like. And you don't ever have to think about it, because it's perfect just as it is as an idea. Putting it out into the world will change it. And it will not be what it looks like in here. And I'm sorry for that. But it will get better over time. It will. And it does. The more you write, the easier it gets. And the more clear the translation becomes from what's in here to what's out here. My first drafts are still awful. They're not as awful as they used to be, but I still hand them to people and they still read them and they say, Rory, what were you thinking? And I sit there and I had this and this was supposed to be and that word wasn't actually and and that's about how they go. But on that I want to do one thing real fast. Don't share it early. Write it down first. Otter said this, and Skunk said this, and I cannot stress this enough. Finish your first draft first. Get it all the way out on the page before you share it with anyone. Because if you share it, one of the few things I have actually learned, I have not learned much. I do not know many things, but I know this. If you share it before it's done, you won't finish it. Because when you share it, you get all the hit, all the endorphin rush, all the dopamine rush of, look at this thing I did. You get all the validation of that act without actually having a finished story. You get all the approval, all the feedback, without a product that's actually complete. And that means you can feel really, really good about what you've done without actually having to do the work. And that means you end up with a draft folder full of things that you don't want to look at anymore. So I have some practice that I need to work on myself, including not sharing my drafts before they're finished.
I think a really good analogy for this, to put in perspective, I think you said it really clear, but think of it like if you're studying for something, if you've got something that you are studying for and you want to reward yourself when you finish studying, and you've got some candy over there that you love this candy, and you're like, I'm going to eat this candy when I'm done, and when you finish, you eat that candy, and that feels good. And that helps you move forward next time to do the full studying, and then you get the candy, and it feels good because you're correlating finishing the studying to eating the candy. But if you start eating the candy partway through, you lose the motivation to do the rest of the studying because you've already gotten that candy. You don't really have the motivation, you don't have the reward left to do that, and you've already rewarded yourself. Mm-hmm. You don't really have that to go off of anymore.
And how many here Who in here mucks? Don't lie to me. Who in here mucks? Okay, I'm actually surprised. The number's down from my age. One of the things
Gotta
that
ask about F-list now.
Oh God.
And also,
Who here RPs? Let's put it that way.
Yes.
Like RPs online. Okay. One of the things that I have learned, and another one of the things that I have learned is that the number of people I have run into who have said that you can take an RP log and turn it into a story, that's not as easy as it sounds, and it needs a lot of cleanup, and it's really kind of difficult. They're not the same skill. One of these is extremely collaborative and spontaneous, and one of these is very solo and deliberate. You can have collaborative writing. I don't think we have a panel on that this year. We should. That's its own craft. That's a very different craft, and I could spend hours talking about that one. But I could spend hours talking about a lot of things. But point being, the dopamine hit that you get from sharing your worlds with people, from sharing all of this, from the visions, when you share them prematurely, you run out of steam really easy. It's hard to keep that momentum up. It's hard to keep the energy up to actually finish the work.
It's like people who say, I'm going to run a marathon. I'm going to run a marathon. How do you know if someone's going to run a marathon? They're going to tell you. Because it's fun to tell. It's great to tell people that you're going to do an accomplishment, and it feels really good to do so. I want to actually jump back quickly to something you were talking about with perception and with looking at your writing, because that reminded me of a piece of advice that I didn't get when I was starting into writing that I think would really help, and that's talking about writer's block. This is a thing that people run into, and it's a difference of your skill as a writer, your perception skill as a writer, getting an imbalance with your technical skill as a writer.
Yes.
And I want to talk about the technicalities of writing block, what the reasons for it are, and how to push through it. Because this is something that everyone runs into. It's a common problem, and it's really important to know how to deal with so that it doesn't hit you early and hard and make it really difficult to get better. Okay, so basically what writer's block is. Writer's block is not just the ideas leaving your head. Writer's block is not just suddenly, I'm really shitty at writing right now and I don't know how I can get better. And the same is true of art block and everything.
Any creative block.
Any creative block.
Yeah, I know that it's so your skill is not a straight line.
Right.
It's doing this number.
And you've got two different aspects of your skill. Your ability to recognize good writing or good art is something that grows over time as you understand it. This is why there are food critics that aren't amazing chefs, why there are art critics who can't draw as well themselves. They've learned to recognize good art and what constitutes it, but they don't necessarily have the technical skills themselves. As you get better at a skill, as you focus on the skill, you're improving both of these at once because you're trying to critique your own writing or other people's writing and use that to improve your own. And what will happen is your skill, your perception skill will improve, and maybe your technical skill will improve more slowly. And at a certain point, your perceptive skill might improve to the point where you look at your own writing and you say, I can see so many flaws in this, but no matter what I do, it doesn't seem to keep up. And this is where your motivation takes a serious hit. This is where you feel like everything I'm writing is shit. I've got so much trouble moving forward. And this is almost always what writer's block is. It's where your perceptive skill, where you've improved to the point, your writing hasn't gotten worse. Your ability to judge the problems in writing has gotten better. And soon, if you keep at it, if you keep on moving forward and you let yourself know what is happening right now, that your writing is still good, you just know how to identify the things that are wrong with it, you can use that skill to keep on pushing forward and understanding what's wrong to improve your technical skill up to the point where it meets that. And that's when you start writing and you feel like you can never stop and you feel like you're putting out amazing work, is when your technical skill catches up to your perceptive skill and you're at this new you're at this new intermediary point where you feel like you're writing at your best. And before long, the cycle repeats. And this is, I think, one of the most important things to really recognize when you're getting into a creative skill, how to deal with this.
And going off of the aspects you were talking about in terms of critiquing, some of you might want to get critique from other writers, because that's a good way to see, like, getting a separate set of eyes on your work is a good way to point out, like, stuff that you had not seen in the story, something that needs improvement. I mean, if you're looking for any, like, there are plenty of resources for finding, like, critiques and, like, advice, especially from people who may have more skill than you at the moment. But in terms of just finding other people to critique, how many writers are in this room right now who are working on stories? And, well, yes, a lot.
Everyone's hands should be raised. You're all writers. You may not be working on stories.
You may not
but
be writing it. It may not be in a file or in a drafts folder you don't want to pretend exists, or you want to pretend doesn't exist.
What Skunkbomb's saying is a great way to jumpstart your skill.
Yeah.
Right, so, yeah, so there are so many writers in this room, like,
Ask
after this, like, ask each other, like, hey,
Ask other people, what are you working on? Ask other people, have you got a draft I can look at? Even if it's just, hey, have you got something I can evaluate? Even if it's not to providing feedback, that's actually something I want to, since there is a panel later on tomorrow? Sometime, there's a panel on RAR, and I highly recommend everyone going to it, because we all went to it, and it is amazing. It was an amazing, it's an amazing retreat, and I can't advertise it highly enough. I can't advocate for it highly enough. Critique is a skill, and I cannot stress this enough. Giving good critique is hard. It in and of itself is a skill. And I want to kind of warn people that it can be difficult to give and to receive critique. Because the first time you put something down on a page and you've done it, it's out, you've taken this thing that you had in here that was driving you crazy and you put it down on the page and you said, I did it. And you know it's not pretty. You know it isn't what you intended because you know your skill's not there yet. And you say, how do I fix it, please? And somebody else looks at it and they say, it's not good. I don't care who you are. I don't care what that piece of work is. I don't care what fortitude you have. I do not care if you are a firefighter, a jet pilot in your spare time, or the CEO of a major megacorp. The first time somebody tells you, well, it's not your best work, you will be crushed.
It happened to me a month ago when I wrote a story and I sent it to my friend, and she was like, here's some changes I'd say with it, and I could tell she was being kind of cagey about it, and I was like, oh, so what do you think of it? Where does it stack up? And she's like, it's definitely not my favorite of your writing. I think that it doesn't really like hit a lot of boxes for me. And that it's incredibly hard to deal with, no matter what stage of writing that you're at. Being told that this thing that you just spent so long on needs a lot of work is a really hard thing to hear.
Always remember, you are a work in progress too. Your skills are developing alongside your stories. You are improving at the same pace that your stories are. And the stories that you will write in the future will be better than the stories you wrote yesterday and the stories you wrote last year. As long as you keep writing, you will continue to get better over time because you are practicing and you are improving because you are learning how to perform your craft.
Put it in a technical sense. With critique, giving critique to people improves your perceptive writing ability.
Yes.
Because you're looking through it and you are finding things that are wrong with a story that's not necessarily your own, and you're recognizing these issues and how they appear and how they pop up. Receiving critique jumpstarts your technical ability. You aren't finding the issues yourself, but you're seeing these issues and you're recognizing them in your writing and you're changing them, and that improves your technical ability to do so. And this is another point where you can end up with these differences on curves. Everything is related to this technical versus perceptive skill levels, and it's when you struggle with writer's block, a decent thing to do is to talk to other people and get a bit of critique and ask how you can improve and to focus on these and focus on changing things in your writing that that other people notice. And that's a good way to get that technical skill to catch up quickly.
I've found that like going to all these conventions, like seeing other writers and going to panels is definitely a big motivation for me. Like I definitely want to just like get on my laptop and start writing something new after I come home from one of these conventions. And after you do get some motivation from here or elsewhere, I feel like before we wrap up here, we only have about 20 minutes. We should talk briefly about like setting goals.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah. So this was I touched upon this earlier, but when you're setting your goals, again, you do not need to do 4,000 or 5,000 words a day or write you don't have to write several chapters in like a week or a month or anything. Definitely take into account like how much time you have in your daily life, especially if you have like a family or if you have a day job. Be realistic about that, but then once you have some free time, try to stick to something that you feel like is realistic. Like, I'm going to sit down on my computer and write for an hour, or I'm going to write, let's say, 1,000 words in a week or so.
I really like that, and I found that it really helps to set a time limit. Word limits can be discouraging when you don't hit them. And I understand that it helps a lot of people to push forward and hit them, and that takes some dedication, but if you start to miss those word count limits, it can really mess with you. I love those time limits, because when you say you're gonna write for an hour, you may not hit the word count every week, but you keep on writing for an hour, and you suddenly find yourself writing twice the amount that you used to because you are just putting down the words every day.
I find that when I do word count limits, I for those of you who were here early, I was kind of babbling a little bit before we started. I tend to find if I try to set myself a word count limit, I end up with text files that are just full of, oh God, I'm wasting my time here. What am I doing? I don't understand. Why am I dumping stream of consciousness into a file? Just to watch the little counter at the bottom tick up, and then it goes ding, and I say, okay, done, delete. That doesn't help anybody. But if you set yourself a timer and you say, all right, I'm going to spend an hour at this, even if I'm staring and I get one sentence out of that hour. That is a sentence I didn't have before that is progress. And if I feel good about that sentence, that's more than I had. And given some of the stuff I've had to deal with in the last 6 months, that's better than I was doing before. So I'll take it. Set yourself a goal. I'm going to finish this story by date. I'm going to do one character study a week. I'm going to do one scene descriptor. I'm going to write one character background. Pick something. Practice it. Whatever it is, what do you want to focus on? Find something that you want to rehearse. Find something that you want to do. Pick a goal.
I like external goals too.
Yeah.
I think it's important to be able to, like, you don't have to put it out there. It can be scary to do so, but it can also be really helpful to start putting your work online. If you're writing furry fiction, you can just stick it on SoFurry. And people may read it and comment, they may not, but being able to have it out there means it's out of your hands, and you can have this in the world and be able to move on to your next step. And it's a goal, it's a concrete thing that you say, I put this online and I can link someone this when they ask me if I've got writing.
Accountability matters.
Right.
This is this is why AA programs talk about having like sponsors or life coaches. And I bring this up only marginally in jest. Having somebody else or having a place where you can say, this is a visible place where I put stuff, in a regular cadence of posting gives you a sense of accountability. If I don't get something up this week, it's going to get noticed. If you're the only person to whom you are accountable at any point, it's real easy to cheat. Anybody here ever tried to lose weight? Those cheat days feel real good, don't they? And they stack up real fast, don't they? Especially when you're not telling anybody, and then the first time you go into a dietitian's office after 6 months, and it's like sitting down at confessional. Because you can't lie to the doctor. They know. They're looking at the scale. They can tell. You get a SoFurry page, you get a Fur Affinity account, you start a blog. You find someplace outside of here, outside of your own laptop, outside of the thing that you control in your entirety. Put it in the world and do it on a schedule so that you have a sense of accountability, not just to yourself, but to your craft, to the thing that drove you to show up here instead of to opening ceremonies.
I want to add on to this too. It's a bit of a tangent, but one thing about posting online, it feels really good when people read your writing and when people look at it, and that can be a great motivating factor. I had this one person on SoFurry who read my 24 chapter long epic, every single chapter, left a comment about the things that happened, the things that they were excited to see happen and what they thought was going on, and that's what kept me writing. And there's a secret to getting comments on SoFurry or Fur Affinity. What you have to do is you have to go to other people's pages, read their writing, and comment on it. When people see your comments, they tend to check out your page. And writers tend to read things too. And there may not be a lot of the writers, but some of them will read what you write, and if you left a comment on their stuff, they will be more likely to leave a comment on your stuff. The best way to get comments on your writing is to leave comments on other people's writing, and that can absolutely be worth the effort to get this kind of external validation of your writing and get these people who you can grow a relationship with, you can end up talking to them about writing and all of this.
The same, I feel, goes for critique as well. It's much easier
Yes.
to get critique if you offer to do a critique in return, or a beta swap. But also, we have about 12 minutes left. I think it might be a good time to open up for any questions that you folks might have. Yes?
So having a full-time job and running a business in your days off, what would you suggest to do to allocate a little bit of time every single day to write?
Get up an hour early.
Yes.
It sounds like shit, I know, but get up an hour early, set yourself a timer and say 30 minutes. Put your laptop or your computer, set it up so that you can just stumble to your computer, get a notebook, have a notebook by your bed, wake up, half an hour, I'm just going to sit here and write, put it down, now I'm going to do my morning routine.
And also, I have not tried this technique myself, but I've heard that writers with long commutes, if you're able to do so, get a recording device and you read it out loud.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Recite
your
it out
phone.
loud.
Use
Yep.
your phone.
Yeah.
What Ori said is exactly what I started doing a little while ago, and it has helped so much. It's an amazing way to do it, and I can't back that up enough.
I hate getting up early.
Me too. It's awful.
Sleep is good.
It's good.
You got a question?
From my own looking at it, a lot of people focus on character development. How do you feel about world building in your stories? How do you go about doing that in the best way possible?
Honestly, I don't that much. I'm the kind of person who focuses very much on characters and character arcs and plot arcs. There are people who focus a lot on world building and a lot on setting up worlds. It's all about how much you feel like you want to develop this setting or develop this world. And it can be really helpful to do so. I know Ori has a fantastic world that she's built really well. I tend to write stories with a very minimalist setting so that I can try to accentuate the arcs of characters and that kind of stuff. And I'm just not that great at the world building, honestly.
Come to the fantasy panel and I will answer your question in full. I don't know. I don't have Sked in front of me, but world building is its own art, And so much of it, so for me, and I will cover this at a very high level, for me, so much of world building is the thought experiment of, okay, what if this one thing were different? Take one thing, change it. How does that ripple out through the rest of the world? What if time travel did succeed and we did kill Hitler? What changed? What events did or did not occur because of that? What if Alexander Graham Bell had been 5 minutes late and Ørsted had gotten the patent on the phone? What if Secretariat had not won that third race? Would we have BoJack Horseman?
Also, in case you're wondering, fantasy writing is Sunday at 10 o'clock in this room, 10 a.m.
Yes. Oh, earlier we were talking about writing groups and RAR and stuff. There is a more generic writing group panel that is actually right after this one, too. If you want to hang out here, Skunk, myself, Alkani, and a few other people who are in our local writing group. And
I won't be on that one, actually.
aren't you?
No.
Oh, who else is on that? Are you
I think it's
TJ?
It's TJ.
Yes, you're on
which,
it. TJ's on it. Yes.
which you
But-
just completely ignored.
Well, I was trying to think about my local writing group because
Big
I remember
Mouse
that was the
Bad.
basis for it, and TJ is in my RAR writing group. But yeah, so that's we'll be talking about, I bet, critiquing, about organizing writing groups, about getting together with people for beta reads and critiques, and that'll be a good resource.
Anyone else? Yes.
Just for some, I was at the opening ceremony, so I got in late. Which one's Mog? Because I want to know backwards.
None of us is Mog.
Mog
Mog
is
is
right
over
there.
there.
He's
Mog is in the Moogle hat.
Yes,
Look for the
he's got
palm.
the amazing mustache in the palm.
Yes.
I'm not sure how much this relates to this specific topic, but I just wanted to know something that the Harlan Ellison, who we just lost, used to do. He wanted to demonstrate that writing was a skill like any other, so he would set himself up with a typewriter in the window of a bookstore and just write the entire story from start to finish.
Hmm?
I want to note that reminded me of something too. It can help a lot to set up a different space for writing than you do like normal internet browsing or you do other activities in. Because when you sit somewhere and you do like regular internet browsing, going through Facebook, Twitter, all that nonsense, your mind sort of acclimates to thinking that this space belongs to this activity. It's like when you go to work, you get yourself in a mindset, and part of that mindset is based on location. If you've ever moved jobs before, it is much easier to work when you move into the job, not just because of the new problems, but also because of the new environment, the new setting, and the fact that you don't have the mental association with this location and either like tedium or whatever. Having your writing not take place in the same spot as you wanting to go on Facebook or Twitter, this is why coffee shops are great and everything. That can really help you focus. It can help you get your goals done.
Bonds and Beautiful World both got written at a Panera, which is now closed.
Oh.
One of the, and I to this day, I wonder if the reason why I've been struggling is because I have not found a good place to go.
Right.
I know one of the, well, that's a whole separate conversation.
I will sometimes just like find a different spot in my apartment, set up a chair weirdly, find a window that I haven't like sat at and put a chair up next to it, put the laptop in my lap, and use that to just make the setting different and try to disorient my focus so that I can just use this location as long as I possibly can to really push through my writing. There's a lot of tricks for that.
Yes.
Yeah, but what if I only have like a desktop computer? Should I just unplug my Ethernet cable or something?
There are, so I can't tell you how to set up your environment. Get a notebook. Notebooks cost you $250. Get a blue book, get a spiral bound notebook and a pen.
Also,
You can
I need my own handwriting.
I don't like
practice.
I don't like physical writing as much either. And I've got a my other suggestion too is to find a tool online that eliminates distractions. Like if the software Scrivener, there's going to be a technical writing panel that's going to talk about a bunch of awesome technical tools for writing, but it has like a mode where you click the button and there's just the page in the middle, 2 black bars on either side, and it eliminates the toolbars, everything that could be there, and just forces you to look at the page of writing. And things like that can also help because they sort of focus you in. I also really like when I have to sit at somewhere like that I would otherwise be distracted, like in a car or something, where I normally just do random things on my phone, and I want to do some writing. I'll use like a noise machine. I love rainymood.com. Just put on some rain, and that sort of takes away your desire to do something else because that's distracted by this sound. It's the same idea as a stress ball. The actual mechanics of a stress ball are that when you're doing something with a stress ball, it satisfies the part of your brain that wants to do something else, that wants to do more productive things by getting endorphins in another way. So when you've got this like rainy mood thing going on, it's sort of like it sort of drowns out your other things and lets you sort of focus on a singular topic.
And going back to environments again, if you can't like take your desktop anywhere, go to your local library and just bring like a flash drive with you so you can save your work.
Yeah, Dropbox. Dropbox is a good tool.
Go hit Tiger Den. There's an internet cafe on the second floor over there. Find some time, steal an hour, and take a look at the other people using the cafe. There are plenty of opportunities at all hours. And I understand about the handwriting because mine is terrible too. I can't read mine, scrawl. My mother's a nurse, I blame her. But seriously, anything you can do to push out the distractions and just say, this space, however I carve it out, with music, with lighting, with change of location, of scene, of setting, turn off these lights, turn on those lights, do something. Get a hue bulb, change what color the room is. Do something to create an environment that says, this is my writing environment. Establish that and say, this is the time and space in which I do my writing. And have it be special to that. And it sounds silly, but at the same time, it's not. Because you train yourself. You are literally building a skill and you are doing it through training. You go to the gym to work out. You go to work. You go to the bedroom to sleep. You go to the kitchen to cook. You create an environment for yourself in which to write. And you create an environment that is conducive to writing by establishing habits. And habits and patterns can help you focus and free you, because the part of your mind that's going, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, is going, but I'm in a familiar setting, I'm in a familiar environment, and the last 30 times I did this, I at least got something happening 3/4 of the time that's better than average.
And now I want to point out, too, that if one of these techniques doesn't work for you, that's fine. Yeah. The reason that we're throwing like 50 different ways to change your environment, to set up the setting for you, is because everyone has their own mechanisms that enable them to focus better. Like, wherever I am, if I throw on rainymood.com and open the Scrivener writing-only page, I can write and not be distracted and keep going at it for like 2 hours. If I just sit there with Scrivener open, no Rainy Mood playing, and at my home location, I'm going to end up on Twitter in about 10 minutes. So that really works for me, but it might not work for other people. I can't write to music. Some people love writing to music.
Yep. I can't do it if it's got lyrics. That just kills me. I've tried. If I understand what they're hearing, those lyrics are going to end up on the page before I know it. I'll just start transcribing and I won't even realize I'm doing it. Yes, I think we have time for one more, and then we. Actually, are we? Oh, we're at time. I'm very sorry.
Oh, I just had an add-on for him.
Can we hear his question quick?
Yeah,
Yeah, go
what was your question very quickly? I think this is the last thing we can afford to do because we are at time.
Alright, so I typically write with a typewriter because I can't go back, and eventually take that piece of paper and I keep slowly refining it. Would that be a good idea?
That's
Yeah,
something
that
that
is
I
a
love.
fine technique.
I forgot to talk about that. One thing that I got caught up with when I was writing, one of the reasons that it became really difficult for me to finish things was because I kept on editing as I wrote. I would get really, I would get incredibly specific about the things that I was doing and trying to make sure everything was perfect before I was done with it. And that meant that I was putting out like 20 words a day, and I was just struggling to get any progress, and that was seriously demotivating. And what I did at one point was just say, I am not pressing the back button ever. I will just have half sentences there and do like three slashes to indicate to myself that no, this isn't a real sentence, I'll probably want to take this out, and then just keep on writing.
Otter has no time.
At our writing group, I wrote, insert scene here, Otter has no time. And I forgot to take that out at the end, and they saw it. But like, you just keep on writing, and that's a wonderful technique. Thank you for bringing that up. It's a very helpful thing to do if you catch yourself not putting words down and instead focusing on revising everything.
So we are now slipping into the next panel. Did you have any final comments from either? You should probably step out so they can.
Right, no, I didn't.
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Thank you all for your time. We have, who is next in here?